every week, and it seemed like every month there'd be a new news article showing how we really screwed up going into Iraq. So it became more and more evident that we really screwed up in Iraq, but we still had this good war in Afghanistan to fight. So when I found out I was going to Afghanistan, I felt a little bit better about the situation. When it really hit home, though, was when we were in Afghanistan, I'm being commanded by all the same people who had just gotten away with war crimes in Iraq. So how's NATO? Because NATO didn't go into Iraq, they went into Afghanistan. How could NATO trust the same people who did devious errors in the war on Iraq? How could they trust them to do the right thing in Afghanistan? And ultimately, a lot of my leaders who had went to Iraq, they brought the Iraq war with them to Afghanistan. That was like part of what we would call our SOP, standard operating procedures, were all built off of what these guys had experienced in Iraq. So it was no wonder to me that things that I would consider war crimes or violations of the Geneva Conventions happened. So when I got back from the war and started doing more research about everything that's going on and how they have projections, even back in 2008, they had projections to continue this war to 2017, no end in sight. So I had to make a choice whether I was going to partake in this anymore. As a sergeant, you can't really, I already went and accepted the rank of sergeant, so I can't just tell them I don't want it anymore and try to get out. So it was basically Canada or go back to Afghanistan. So I went AWOL and came to Canada.
So what do you risk being here?
Well, if I'm ever sent back, I would I'd immediately be taken into military control. More than likely have a court-martial. They usually take 6 months to a year. I'd be back in the regular Monday to Friday Army. By the time I get my sentence, some of the worst sentences have been between 15 and 25 months. The worst of which being 25 months was I was a U.S. Army sergeant who had returned after 5 years in Canada. They hit him with the 2-year sentence. So that's technically, I could be in a military jail for up to 2 years, just for having spoke out. Not just going AWOL, but also for being AWOL and speaking out against my government.
So what's your plan?
Well, we keep fighting them in the courts, the immigration. Like, I beat the federal court of Canada when we did a judicial. They tried to deny me. We didn't appeal it. We did a judicial review, basically saying we didn't have trust in the judge. It went up to the federal court, and now we beat the federal court, so I get a new immigration case. But basically, it's back to square one. But we've had.
What status do you have here?
Just
Tourist.
pretty. No. Like I'm on the. I check in with immigration once a month. Every year I have to reapply for my work permits, but I've had steady work the past few years. I'm a construction worker up here, an iron worker. I've built hospitals. I built that building right there, part of it. So I'm just, doing my part for Canada, trying to build up Canada.
How long have you been?
4 years. Yeah, August will be 4 years.
So what about your family?
It's just my mom back in the States. My sister had died when I was up here, and I couldn't go back for the funeral because I would have got arrested at the border. So that's been tough because my mom's alone. My dad died when I was a kid. But it's all part. There's so many war resistors up here in Canada too. Now my case has reached so far into it. There's other people up here where their cases kind of rely on mine, so I can't desert them.
So did you come here alone, or did you come here with others?
I came here.
How did you get that idea of coming here? Like, just because basic knowledge that...
I knew when I didn't agree with the war anymore, I started looking up my options for what I could do. Mainly, I made up my mind that I was going AWOL. I knew I was going to go AWOL, but then when I really started to look at how hard it would be, being a combat veteran, being somebody who had served 5 years, like, if I had just gone to basic training and said, I don't like this, and left, you get a slap on the wrist. I'd done 5 years, they gave me sergeant, so they'll nail me against the wall. So once I found that out, I found out about this group in Canada that was offering, they're trying to offer a different take to it. So rather than just go AWOL and try to fly under the radar in the States, I came up to Canada, trying citizenship up here.
Okay, just talk about the war in Afghanistan a bit more. So basically realized it was not the war you were thinking you were fighting there? Or
Yeah,
before that?
yeah, because like, again, the people all commanded me.
Is there an event or something that happened maybe?
Oh, all the time. We would do something we call recon by fire, basically randomly firing into mountains. Like, we didn't know if anybody's there or not. We would call it a baited ambush. You're trying to draw people out. So we just fire randomly into places to see if you get engaged. There'd be other times, say we actually did get hit first, and we were able to see who was. It didn't matter if they were on the run, if they're in a civilian populated area or not. Even if it was just two people, we've called in airstrikes. On one time in particular, it was a guy, and he was holding his friend who had lost both his legs already, and they were on the run. They were on the retreat. You're not supposed to hunt down people on the retreat. We called in a 500-pound bomb just to take out two people. It is a heavily populated civilian area. Our second platoon had accidentally killed a mother and child, and they offered the family a goat at $500, and they took it and signed the paper. Once they signed the paper, they can never protest NATO. They can't protest their own guy. They can't protest us because they signed. They took the reward. And then the worst was when our second platoon was engaged in a firefight where one of our soldiers, Zachary Talir, he was killed, shot and killed. The unit went around collecting all the dead bodies, and they put them on the hoods of trucks. These bodies weren't they were dismembered parts, and every truck had the body parts on the hoods of the trucks. And they drove through all the towns just to show the local populace what would happen if you don't work with us. It was just too messed up.
Did you have any contact with Afghans over there? What kind of contact do you have?
Yeah, like we work with mainly the Afghan police and Afghan army, which in our mind, like all the soldiers, we all thought they were corrupt anyway. We didn't like working with them. I'd say we were generally more well-spirited in the beginning of our deployment, but by the time we were there already a year, like we spent 15 months. The first 6 months, we were pretty nice. After 6 months, we're all sick of being there. Like the mindset being, we have to be here because these people can't do it for themselves. And that's not the right set of mind when you're supposed to be liberating people. So a lot of times, we didn't even really, it got to the point where we didn't care about the local population. We would, like one thing we'd have to do is we'd offer, for our bases, our small combat outposts up in the mountains, we would offer jobs to maybe 10 or 15 locals to come clean up our garbage, clean up our stuff, whatever. Even these guys that worked on our base with us, we were ruthless with them. If one of these local nationals who was working on our base during the day, and they don't speak English or anything else, if they happened to have pissed off one of the cooks at our base, the cooks would purposely put pork in every meal that we were serving just to exclude any Muslim from eating it, including the interpreters that we have to work with on a daily basis. Like, oh God, guys giving out pork rinds to little kids and stuff like that. Just a lot of, it's a big, I wouldn't say a racist venture, but there's a lot of sub-racism in the army.
So, you're kind of activist and that kind of thing, so now,
I just speak out when I can.
Yeah. But are you for the troops to go back, to be removed from Afghanistan?
I think.
How soon do you want that?
We just marched in. We can march right now. Seriously, like every day we.
Because they said the mission is not over. That kind of thing. It takes time.
But what's the mission? The mission's just been getting worse and worse for 11 years now. So I think America needs to sit back and reconsolidate and get their priorities straight. NATO needs to get their priorities straight because all these Western nations, we're all falling apart, but we're all funding this massive war, spending $350 million a day, but demanding austerity packages back home. We got to get our priorities straight. We got to end this. This is the longest war in history now. Well, not in history, but in recent history. It's the longest war. It's insanity. It's got to end.
All right. Is there anything else you want to add?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Great stuff.
One question. Where are you turning your medals into?
I gave mine to a Vietnam veteran who's going